The port of Los Angeles, quiet, sunlit, and still. It was March 2020, and across the world, fear was spreading faster than the coronavirus itself. In the harbour of Los Angeles, a giant white hospital ship called the USNS Mercy had just arrived, sent by the US Navy to help during the early chaos of the pandemic. But only 4 days later, that same harbour would witness something no one could explain. A freight train, out of control, left the rails and charged through barriers, roads and fences, heading straight toward the hospital ship. Was it an accident, a malfunction, or something far more disturbing? What investigators uncovered would shock the nation. This is the story of the Los Angeles train that tried to hit the USNS Mercy. The Port of Los Angeles, a vast gateway where ships from around the world arrive and depart each day. It sits on the Pacific coast of Southern California, about 20 miles, or 32 kilometers, south of downtown Los Angeles. The port stretches between the communities of San Pedro and Long Beach, serving as both a busy freight terminal and a hub for passenger ships. Among the rail companies serving the harbour is the Pacific Harbour Line, often known as PHL. Founded in 1998, this private rail operator manages about 95 kilometres, or 59 miles, of track in and around the Port of Los Angeles. These short-distance runs are known as shunting operations, or switching, a category of rail work focused on rearranging and positioning freight cars rather than long-haul travel. Because of this, PHL operates under a different set of rules, with less strict safety requirements than those applied to major railroads. One of the key figures in this story is the USNS Mercy, a massive white hospital ship operated by the United States Navy. The Mercy began her life as an oil tanker before being converted into a floating hospital in 1985. She is an enormous vessel, about 273 metres long, or 894 feet, and 32 metres wide, just over 100 feet across. When activated, the ship carries a crew of 135 sailors, joined by a medical staff of more than 1,000 people. Inside, she functions as a complete hospital, with 1,000 patient beds, 12 operating rooms, and departments for radiology, burns, pharmacy, and even a full blood bank. In March 2020, as the COVID-19 pandemic spread across the United States, the Mercy arrived at the Port of Los Angeles, docking at the city's cruise terminal. Her mission was clear: to treat non-COVID patients and relieve the pressure on the city's overwhelmed hospitals. Among the locomotives operated by the Pacific Harbour Line was one known as PHL-21, an MPIM P20B diesel engine. On the afternoon of March 31st, 2020, PHL-21 was out on a routine job, pulling a short line of freight cars through the harbour. At the controls was Eduardo Moreno, a 44-year-old engineer with years of experience in local shunting operations. It was the afternoon of March 31st, 2020. Eduardo Moreno was at the controls of a short freight train, moving slowly through the Port of Los Angeles. His route ran along a quiet industrial branch line, a single dead-end track beside Knoll Drive near the Smith Island Container Terminal. Knoll Drive itself curves sharply through the harbour, looping in a wide 180-degree turn just below the towering Vincent Thomas Bridge. At the end of this branch line, inside that curve, the rails come to a stop, ending at a simple buffer meant to keep trains from going any farther. As Moreno's train moved along the quiet tracks that afternoon, nothing seemed out of place, until the engine rounded a gentle right-hand curve, about 400 metres from the end of the line. Ahead of him, beyond the bridge and the harbour's still water, he saw it. The USNS Mercy, towering in the distance. A giant white ship, gleaming under the California sun. In that moment, something changed. For reasons investigators would later struggle to understand, Moreno suddenly pushed the throttle forward. The locomotive's engine roared, its wheels clattering faster along the short, straight stretch that led toward the buffer stop. The end of the track was clearly in sight, yet the train didn't slow down. Moments later, PHL 21 smashed through the buffer, tearing off the rails completely. The heavy diesel engine thundered across Knoll Drive, breaking through guardrails and scattering debris. It crashed through a parking lot, ploughed through another barrier, and rumbled over a gravel yard beneath the Vincent Thomas Bridge, finally grinding to a stop on the edge of Regan Street. The first freight car had broken free, derailed beside it. Just a few hundred feet ahead, the USNS Mercy remained untouched, still about 200 metres away. Incredibly, no one was hurt. The train had narrowly missed 3 occupied vehicles, one slight difference in direction, and the outcome could have been catastrophic. From a nearby patrol car, a California Highway Patrol officer had seen everything. The moment the locomotive left the tracks, he rushed toward the scene, dust and debris still hanging in the air. As he arrived, Moreno was already climbing out of the cab, stumbling away from the wreckage. His escape didn't last long. Within moments, the officer caught up and detained him just a short distance from the locomotive. At first, it seemed like just another industrial accident, but that changed quickly. As the officer began questioning him, Moreno spoke with a strange calmness, almost as if he believed what he had done was necessary. He said, "You only get this chance once. The whole world is watching. I had to. People don't know what's going on here. Now they will. At night, they turn off the lights and don't let anyone in. I'm going to expose this to the world. When was the last time you went to Dodger Stadium? We might not be able to go again." After his arrest, Moreno was turned over to the Los Angeles Port Police. During his first questioning, he made no attempt to deny what had happened. Calmly, he admitted, "I did it." To the investigators, it quickly became clear that he viewed his actions not as a crime, but as a kind of mission accomplished. Moreno claimed that the USNS Mercy was not what it was claimed to be. He spoke in vague terms about hidden government plans, secret operations, and doubts about the pandemic itself. His statements jumped from one idea to another, suggesting a mix of confusion and conviction. Moreno insisted that he had acted entirely on his own, without help from anyone else, and without any real plan. He said the idea came to him suddenly, a spur-of-the-moment decision. In his mind, the crash wasn't about causing damage. It was about sending a message, to draw attention, so that, in his words, people could see for themselves. What exactly the world was supposed to see remained unclear, because in reality, all that stood before investigators was a derailed freight train, stopped hundreds of feet short of the ship he had been aiming for. Moreno's statement stood in sharp contrast to the real purpose of the USNS Mercy. The ship was never meant to treat COVID patients at all. Instead, it was brought in to handle non-COVID cases, helping to free up space in Los Angeles hospitals that were struggling under the growing pandemic. In other words, the Mercy was there to save lives, not to hide anything sinister. But for Moreno, the facts didn't seem to matter. Perhaps he truly believed in his theory, or perhaps, as some investigators would later suggest, he had simply convinced himself of a story that wasn't real. Back at the crash site, firefighters rushed to contain a massive fuel spill after the locomotive's tanks were torn open during the derailment. Inside the wrecked cab, investigators recovered video footage from the onboard camera, and what they found was deeply unsettling. In the final seconds before impact, Moreno could be seen standing at the controls, holding a lit flare. No one could say for certain what he intended to do. Was he planning to set the ship, the train, or even himself, on fire? Or was it simply an act of desperation and drama? Whatever his motive, the act was taken seriously. Moreno was held overnight before being transferred to FBI custody the next day. His case was escalated to the federal level, and prosecutors charged him under a rarely used statute, train wrecking, a serious offence that carries a maximum sentence of up to 20 years in prison. He was also accused of committing a terrorist act against a mass transportation system. Once the federal charges were announced, Moreno became far more talkative. In court documents, investigators recorded a long and rambling statement, a window into the strange world he believed in. Moreno claimed that the USNS Mercy was part of a secret government plan, a conspiracy, he said, to lure healthy and open-minded people onto the ship and then get rid of them. He insisted that the infection numbers were being fabricated and that people were being deliberately infected or even killed by the government. When asked where he got these ideas, he mentioned a number of online sources, including QAnon and the X-22 report, both well known for spreading conspiracy theories during the height of the pandemic. For investigators, the picture was becoming clearer. Moreno wasn't acting on behalf of any group or cause. He was acting on a belief, one built on fear, misinformation, and isolation. A later psychological evaluation confirmed that he had suffered a psychotic episode. He was prescribed medication and, interestingly, was ordered to reduce what doctors described as a copious caffeine intake. After months of evaluations and hearings, Eduardo Moreno finally appeared in federal court in December 2021. At first, he argued that he was unfit for sentencing, claiming insanity at the time of the derailment. But eventually, he accepted a plea deal, and in April 2022, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Alongside his prison term, he was also ordered to pay more than $756,000 in damages to his former employer, the Pacific Harbor Line. During sentencing, the court's psychological expert noted that Moreno had since turned away from the online conspiracy circles that had once consumed him. He was also continuing medication and therapy for his mental health. The expert believed that these steps, combined with his new understanding of what had happened, made him unlikely to repeat his actions. When it comes to railway operations, investigators later pointed to 2 major factors that played a role in this incident. The first was Moreno's declining mental state, something that, unfortunately, went unnoticed by both his co-workers and supervisors. Over time, he had become lost in a world of online theories and half-truths, yet was still trusted to operate hundreds of tons of moving steel each day, often in close proximity to other workers and equipment. In the United States, train drivers are not required to undergo any regular psychological evaluations. Only a few companies voluntarily choose to perform such screenings, often limited to the hiring process. Aviation faces a similar challenge. After the tragic Germanwings Flight 9525 crash in 2015, experts found the same pattern: pilots hiding mental struggles to protect their licenses. The question isn't just how this happened once, it's how many times it almost happens, every single day, in a world where information moves faster than truth can catch up. We all believe in something, but maybe the real test is how far we're willing to go for that belief, and whether we still stop to ask ourselves, what if I'm wrong?